What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to College Football Talk with Peter Burtnett. And in today's news, the College Football Playoff officially announced that they're going to be going with the 5+7 model for the 12-team playoff. But why does that matter? Why is that important that they're going with that decision? Well, I'm going to be going over some of the things that affects in this video. But before I do, if you're going to enjoy this video, please feel free to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, turn on those post notifications so you're always up to date whenever I post. But without further ado, let's get into some of the reasons why this matters. So first things first, just kind of introducing some background. The 12-team playoff will be in effect for the first time this season, going away from the 4-team model that we've had for the last decade. And so this obviously gives an opportunity for more teams to get into the field and for more teams to have a chance at winning a national championship. My thoughts on it, I think 12 teams is a little bit much to make a jump from 4 to 12. I would have personally liked to see a jump to maybe 6 or 8. I think 6 is good. I love what the NFL used to do with having, the top 2 teams really be playing for a bye. But I understand too, it's to emphasize, being a conference champion, and I'll talk more about that later. But I think 12 teams, there is a risk of a watered down playoff system, but I do really like having, in that first week where you have 5 versus 12, 6 versus 11, 7 versus 10, and 8 versus 9, those 4 matchups, you have 5, 6, 7, and 8 all hosting. And so getting to see teams like the teams that would have hosted this year, I think, were Ohio State. I think Oregon was a team that would have hosted Georgia and Florida State. So seeing those teams get an opportunity to host a playoff game, in I think early mid-December is something that's certainly exciting to look forward to. And so I do like it from that perspective. I do just kind of fear that those quarterfinal rounds or first round matchups at the very least maybe might be a little bit watered down, and then you'll have the 1, 2, 3, and 4 teams being added in there. I think that's where it can get a bit more competitive, where you have the first round winners, and that would be the quarterfinals then. But what does the 5+7 model mean, and how does it differ from one of the other options? Well, one of the other options was a 6+6 option, where you have the top six conference champions, and that would obviously include the Power 4, I guess is what they probably should be known as now, the Big 10, SEC, Big 12, and ACC, with the Pac-12 no longer existing, at least in this capacity. Obviously, you have 2 teams out there in Oregon State and Washington. More on those 2 teams in a minute. But this model allows for 7 at-large bids versus 6 from the other model. And because of, I think who this model hurts is some of those group of 5 teams. You look at a team, like Liberty, and I think who else would have been in the running for it this year? I think it would have been Tulane or SMU, those 2 teams in the American Conference. In the 6+6 model, because the Pac-12 ceases to exist in this capacity, you would have had 2 group of 5 teams that would get a chance to come in. And so, Oregon State and Washington State were given kind of a lot of influence, maybe even power in this situation, and they were given a chance to vote kind of as the Pac-12. And I think they both voted for this 5+7. I think their commissioner or somebody with importance in the Pac-12, I'll pop up that quote I found in an article from ESPN, but we're saying that when you have that extra at-large spot, because for the next 2 years at least, Oregon State and Washington State will be considered only for those at-large positions. They can't be a conference champion. They basically function as independents for the next couple of years. And so that's, it helps out a team like an Oregon State and Washington State. Oregon State the last couple of years hasn't been far from where they could have been in a 12-team playoff. I think finishing 10-3 a couple of years ago. They'll miss head coach Jonathan Smith, but that's a discussion for another time, what I expect out of the Beavers this year. But it does present them an opportunity to make it as an at-large team. And I think it does. It kind of, like I said already, it kind of hurts those group of 5 teams that win their conference and maybe end up now missing out on a chance to make the playoff, because more than likely it's going to be, they'll be getting into that 12 spot because maybe they're, the 20th best team, for example, right around where Liberty was this year, but they get into the playoff because they're the top conference champion in the group of 5. They're the highest ranked in that, and so they sneak into that 12 spot. And that's another point too that is kind of a point of interest, I guess, is that 12 spot, because you look at it in this past season, Oklahoma would have been left out of the playoff because Liberty would have taken that spot at number 12 where the Sooners were ranked. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about a team like, an Oklahoma, Texas, an Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, any team, especially from the Big Ten and SEC and maybe from the Big 12 and ACC. If a team from one of those conferences just has a couple losses, it's kind of almost been talked about like they'd just be a shoo-in. But even Oklahoma, whose 2 losses were to a college football playoff team in Texas, and then the team in their conference that went to the conference championship game, Oklahoma State, those were their 2 losses. Those are really good, high-quality losses, but the Sooners still would have been left out of the playoff this year. And maybe, the ranking could have been different. It could have been Ole Miss getting left out instead. But it does showcase that even if you go 10-2, it might not be enough because you might have a group of 5 team that gets in ahead of you. So I think aiming for, winning every game and kind of thinking of it like you can afford for probably to lose one. I do not anticipate there being any situation where a team gets left out of this 12-team field with 1 loss in any of the Power 4 conferences. But I think if you have 2, it's a little tenuous. So that's kind of what I'm eyeing right now as we head into this model. Again, I'm looking forward to it in the perspective of having more teams having at least a shot at a national championship. How real, legitimate that shot is, I don't think it's really that that great of a chance, especially for those teams that are lower ranked. But you never know. Anything can happen in college football, and I hope to be proven wrong. I think of it as kind of being likely that it could be a bit watered down. But I am definitely almost hopeful that I'm wrong in that area, because it would be awesome to see maybe that group of 5 team even pull off a major upset, or to see one of the lower ranked Power 4 teams pull off an upset. And it's not guaranteed that it'll be Power 4 teams filling those spots. I think it's expected and implied that that's what'll happen, but it's highly possible that you can have, maybe we have a couple of group of 5, teams that have really good seasons, and maybe some of the other Power 4 teams, it's kind of more, a lot of teams around 9-3, 8-4. I think there's a possibility you could get a couple of group of 5 teams in there over a Power 4 team. But as the rankings have shown in the last couple years, I think that's pretty unlikely. Group of 5 teams have tended to stay around that 15 to 25 range, which would be just outside of this. But let me know your thoughts on the 5x7 model, your thoughts just on the 12-team playoff as well. I think maybe as kind of a supplemental video to this in the next couple of days, even, or at least in the next week or so, I'll make a video of the teams that I kind of expect right now to fill these playoff spots. I think probably Ohio State and Oregon in the Big Ten, probably Michigan. I think those are probably the 3 teams. I think out of the SEC, Texas and Georgia are the 2 teams with the best chance. I think Alabama's kind of in that middle ground. Ole Miss is kind of right there with them. LSU as well. Out of the Big 12, I think the Big 12 is so wide open. I'll probably save that for a later video. The ACC is probably Florida State and Clemson. Those are kind of some of the teams. So I guess Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, that's 3. Texas, Georgia is 5. I think those are 5 teams that have the best chance for sure to get in. You're going to have an ACC team, so that's 6, and I think possibly 2 if it's Florida State and Clemson. And then you have Alabama, Ole Miss, and LSU kind of on the outside looking in, and Penn State as likely to be in that range. Washington is also kind of on that fringe range. But again, I'll save diving into that for another video. But if you stuck around to this point in this video, thank you so much for taking the time to watch College Football Talk. I'm excited to continue growing and bringing the best content for you guys who are watching. But that's it for this episode. I'm your host, Peter Burtnett, signing out. Peace.